Are the rumors true? Is it really all over? Is the sacred otaku haven known as Akihabara done for? Well, let's talk about it.
なんすか? それは許せないと思いますこれ.
At some point early on in my otaku life, I learned about a wondrous place in Tokyo, Japan, where you were free to be your otaku self. A place where, among other things, you could buy all the latest doujinshi, all the latest eroge, and all the latest figures. Being from the UK, where no place like this existed, I dreamed about visiting this haven for otaku where I felt I could finally be free. That place, of course, was Akihabara. And I did go numerous times during my trips to Japan, and even more so once I finally moved here many moons ago. But, like many others, I started to notice something weird happening to Akiba. It started to feel less like a place for otaku into particular niches, and well, different. Before we start to get into that though, let's go back a bit and take a look at the actual history of Akihabara, which turns out to be a lot more interesting than one might have thought. During the Edo period, the area that would come to be known as Akihabara was actually home to craftsmen, tradesmen, and lower-class samurai. This was a period where fires frequently broke out, including in that area, leading to the construction of a shrine called Chinkasha, with the hope it would help prevent future fires. Chinkasha would eventually come to be called Akibasha or Akiba Shrine, as it was believed this shrine was home to the deity of fire prevention Akiba Daigongen. And long story short, this is linked as to why the area would come to be called Akihabara. This is also said to be why Akihabara is sometimes referred to as Akiba. Akihabara Station would be completed in 1890, initially used as a freight terminal linked to Ueno Station before being opened to passenger traffic in 1925. Because of this, around Akihabara Station, a number of merchants would start selling their wares such as fruit and vegetables. After the war though, as Tokyo lay in ruins, around the station a black market started to form. Yep, I bet you didn't know that one. During that time, there was just a lack of supplies, so a number of merchants used routes that the government didn't approve of to bring into the market things such as food, clothes, and other daily necessities. But amazingly, it's actually through this black market that Akihabara would start on its trajectory to being the place for otaku.
メイドって言ったら秋葉のアイドルみたいなもんですからね。それはちょっとね、世間は許してくれませんよ。
You see, close to that area, there was a technical college that would eventually end up being Tokyo Denki University. Students would come to the black market, buy radio parts, and sell completed radios as a part-time gig. This proved to be a very lucrative business, as radio was hugely popular in Japan since it offered much needed entertainment for many during the post-war period. It would also prove beneficial for all the engineers and mechanics that found themselves out of work after the war, and as a result, many street vendors selling electrical parts showed up in Akihabara. However, the US Army GHQ, who were essentially ruling Japan at that time, wanted the roads to be expanded, so they put out an order to get rid of the street vendors. To keep a long story short, after protests and some negotiating, those businesses would be provided spaces around Akihabara Station to conduct their business. One of those places was actually Radio Kaikan, which I'm sure many of you recognize. More and more vendors selling electrical parts would open up in close proximity to each other within those areas, creating that Akihabara vibe that many of us would become familiar with. From the 50s onwards, as the country saw rapid economic growth, Japan saw a surge in popularity for electrical appliances such as TVs, washing machines, and freezers. This is essentially what turned Akihabara into the quote-unquote electric town, the place to be to get your hands on the latest electrical goods. This would expand to PC and PC parts in the late 70s and 80s as Japan would experience what is now dubbed as the microcomputer boom. As a result, by the 90s, Akihabara did have a lot of what I guess you could call technology otaku, but it's also during this period that the change into the Akihabara that many of us recognize would start to happen. At some point, some business owners started to recognize that Akihabara was the perfect place to sell something else other than electrical goods. Yep, that something else was anime-related goods and video games. One theory is that the immense popularity of Evangelion, which started airing in Japan in 1995, is what helped spur the idea that those into things like anime would make great customers to target. And boy, they were right. In the late 90s, there were even news articles that were about quote-unquote otaku business and how otaku were actually helping the economy. So even though Akihabara did turn into a comfortable place for otaku, who at the time were not being viewed very well in general within Japanese society, there was a strong financial motivation behind this movement. Particular niches were recognized along with their customer base, and businesses were formed to fulfill those customers' needs. In the 2000s, with maid cafes entering into the fray and shops casually selling things like trading cards, figures, bishoujo games, and adult doujinshi, it really was heaven for many different types of otaku into particular niches. Akihabara had sort of become the center point for the otaku subculture in Japan. With many like-minded people getting together in one place, you could be completely free to enjoy your hobbies out in the open and even make friends too. So, what exactly changed then? Well, there are a number of factors we need to consider. One of them, which is often touted, is how a global spotlight started to shine on Akihabara as anime started to become hugely popular worldwide. The number of overseas tourists that came to visit the area greatly increased, but what many casual anime tourist fans would find was not exactly child-friendly stuff. As a result, we started to see a shift from products and spaces for specific types of otaku to shops and services that catered more to these overseas tourists. However, that's not all. A pretty big factor we must consider is that the buying habits of local otaku just changed. I mentioned in my video on Momoi Haruko that she started frequently going to Akihabara because she could buy the latest issue of the gaming magazine Famitsu before anyone else. But in the age of the internet, the advantage of buying things directly from shops in Akihabara started to wane. Some would even go into a shop to say take a look at the figure they wanted to purchase, then buy it online where they could find it for slightly cheaper. And of course, the biggest factor that would push online buying habits would be the pandemic. I actually went to Akihabara during this time, and it really was desolate. The lively, active vibe of Akihabara had completely vanished. This, along with a surge in utility and energy costs, hit a lot of businesses really hard, and as a result, we would see the closure of many stores, including a few famous ones. Something else that many, including myself, started to notice is how seedy Akihabara started to become, especially at night. Many themed cafes known as Koncafe, posing to be legit businesses, started popping up. But in reality, these places were actually ripping off customers. Apparently, there were efforts by the police to crack down on these places, but to a somewhat limited success. Not only that, some of these quote-unquote themed cafes were offering other services that were more than just girls going moe moe kyun. It turns out that behind a lot of these establishments were some pretty shady characters that came from other parts of Tokyo, like Kabukicho and Shinjuku, who sought to take advantage of Akihabara's shop closures and the needs of guys looking for direct communication during that tough period. All this just further discouraged a lot of local otaku from going to Akihabara. Regardless where you put the focus on, Akihabara has changed, and with redevelopment plans given the go-ahead, we're going to see even more changes in the near future. But just like I've been talking about throughout this whole video, Akihabara has always gone through changes, so this is not something really new. Personally speaking though, I really liked the subcultural vibe of Akihabara as being able to discover a whole new world that I knew nothing about. Deep down, that 2000s, early 2010s Akihabara was honestly the best period to me. However, I know there are a myriad of opinions about this topic, so please feel free to let us know your thoughts in the comment section below. Honestly, this wasn't an easy topic for me to talk about. I really do love Akihabara and its really unique vibe, and I don't really want it to lose that, but at the same time, things do indeed change, and there is very little I can do to control that. I definitely think Akihabara is still an interesting place to visit, and there is a lot to enjoy, but yeah. Anyway, as always, thank you for watching, hope to see you again next time, but until then, take care guys, peace.